Simple.
Where's the Energizer Bunny? He knew what I was Sorry, Frederick.
Okay, well, we've done the roll call. We did the Pledge of Allegiance earlier, so. Lisa, you about ready to roll?
Yes. Hello again.
111, yeah, triple. 1111.
Hello again. Lisa Robertson, Director of Financial and Administrative Services, here to present the preliminary budget draft for the next fiscal year, 2023-2024. It will start on October 1st, so just around the corner. We wanted to first review our calendar. This is the initial official budget meeting that we will have, where you'll see a full balanced budget. Every meeting hereafter between now and September, we'll be talking about the budget as we adopt it, as we have been to thus far with the workshops we've been doing on the capital improvement program. Yes, sir.
What is you said balanced budget? What was that? What's
Yes.
that mean?
By Florida statutes, we have to balance our budget. That means that the money that we have on hand and the money that we bring in needs to be at or exceed what we want to spend and what we want to have in reserves.
How do you do that? You don't know how much money you're coming in with.
We make projections, and that's
Oh,
what you hear us
okay.
talk about a lot, and you're going to hear us talk about a lot. And
Okay.
And finance, when you're looking to the future, it's all about projections. And the way we deal with those is we refine those as we go in the need, if the need should
Okay,
arise.
so this year's going to be a little special with this storm.
I believe it will be, and I believe we've been chatting about that quite regularly with the impacts of the hurricane that we're still feeling. Anyway, we will be talking about the budget every time we meet, again, between now and September. There are a couple meetings. We try to hold our budget hearings consistent with our regular council meetings. However, some years we run into some conflicts. There are some meeting dates we can't conflict with. The school board and the county specifically, they pick their dates initially by Florida statutes, and then we pick our dates. So therefore, our official first budget hearing that's in September, we have to have by Florida law, 2 in September. That will be a Tuesday, September 12th, and that'll be at 5:30, and those are required to be either evenings or Saturday weekends. So that's a little unusual for you all, so we want to point that out. I believe everybody has that populated on their calendar. And our last final budget hearing, that'll be the final adoption of the budget, will be Wednesday, September 20th at 5:30. We will take a total of 3 millage rate votes as we move through our process. The next meeting, August 2nd, will be our initial millage rate vote. That'll be what will appear on your truth in millage notice that gets mailed out. That is the highest rate that you can adopt. We start there, and then we have 2 millage rates, 2 millage rate votes after that, both in September by Florida statute. You can go lower. You can lower your millage rate at those, but you cannot go up. So that's an important item to note. Strategic priorities. Our draft budget is based on the following strategic priorities. And in fact, the directors and the managers, they utilize these priorities, which we just updated last year. We utilize those in planning and budgeting. So our budget, in fact, you'll see in our capital improvement program, it's all outlined and subtotaled by strategic priority. We've actually added a neat little graph in your budget packet too that shows the consistency graphically of the different strategic priorities, and the allocation of resources in our capital improvement program line up with these priorities, we're proud to say. This budget draft is based upon, the draft that you have before you today is based upon our current year millage rate, 8,000, and it's based upon our current rate for our storm utility. We will take our storm utility rate vote at our next meeting as well. Our millage rate vote and our storm utility vote will be at our very next meeting. That's consistent with our prior year. And in order to get
We
that
have
into-
one vote on the stormwater?
Yes, it's an annual required vote. Yes, sir.
Only once?
Only once.
Not like the Miller?
Yes, no, sir. We wanted to start off the budget presentation by reviewing the financial highlights that has helped us to get to where we are today this fiscal year, our current fiscal year that we're in right now. The city has received American Rescue Plan dollars, $7.24 million. We received those. Those are in the bank. We finished our reporting. You've heard me mention that earlier, for governmental services. So that money was actually able to help replenish our general operating fund and provide governmental, everyday operational services. Very powerful grant. I'm very pleased that that worked out that way.
Great.
The city also received from FEMA to date $4.75 million. That was an expedited funds. The state stepped in with FEMA and helped us make sure we got those early. We are grateful for that. And those were reimbursed at 100%. Outstanding. That particular piece, city will not be required to match, but we do want to state as we move forward through our FEMA process, there may be city matching funds that are required. We'll talk about that a little later. As of June, we have experienced, as we've been talking about monthly, positive revenue collection trends have continued primarily, with the exception of building and impact fees, which are based on new construction. We know immediately after the hurricane, the new construction was somewhat slowed down, if you will. Revenues by category. This is a pie chart that you all see on a regular basis. That's so that for a governmental entity, it's good not to be too concentrated in one particular type of revenue. So this is a healthy pie chart. You'll see our ad valorem taxes there and some of our other significant ones. On here, what I'd like to mention is interest rates, as you've been hearing, of course, as inflation's gone up, interest rates have gone up, the amount of money you can earn for having your funds deposited. So we've been seeing some, like everyone else, some significantly positive trends, and that's going to help us. That's helping us bounce our budget. That'll help us do everything we do on a daily basis when we have to match some of these grants funds or do something else as we're prioritized with our money. That just gives us a better base of our regular recurring operating funds. And we actually have this year, too, some capital contributions. When you all approved partnering with Bonita Springs Utilities for our septic to sewer, those two projects, they actually paid their 50% match. We got the grant, and then we split that, I believe. So you'll see that coming into us. Again, we've partnered with them the last couple of years on a couple different projects, so we treat that as capital contributions because we disperse the funds and they give us their portion of it. Again, just good inflow of cash to have.
Very good, good.
Thank you. Expenditures by function. The state requires us to report these function titles, and it helps us to be comparable with other entities. It goes into the state database, and it gives them an idea of where local governments are spending their dollars. We do show you this on a monthly basis. These are for all your funds, regular, recurring, and capital. So when you see most of the spikes, most of our significant spikes have to do with the timing of capital improvement projects. As you all know, we try to save money up, plan. We start our planning process for our capital improvement programs, and then once we get to where we're actually purchasing some right-of-way or we're constructing something or doing a construction contract, that's when the funds start getting dispersed. So those are the spikes that you see, and that's just regular how capital improvement programs are designed to work. Yes?
Oh, no, I was going to say, we have Councilman Corey now on.
Oh.
He missed roll call. If I could have a motion and a second to allow him to participate.
I make that motion.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bogas.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr. Mayor Steinmeier.
Aye.
Councilmember Fullick.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you so much. Revenue by fund types. You all will know from seeing me every month, I love the graphs and the things that do it by fund type, because that way we get an idea of our regular recurring revenue, which is in blue here, and our regular recurring expenditures. That's what it takes to keep our lights on. So as you can see, it's pretty consistent there. That is a good thing. That's one of the things that's helping us as we face some uncertainty and we head into our tax year this year with the impacts on structures, taxable values of structures. This is going to help us. We're seeing positive trends. We're going to talk about it a little later. The state does a good job of predicting, giving us predictions for our statewide revenues, sales tax, communication services tax, local option gas tax. We're going to watch those estimates. They're not out yet, but we're going to watch them and make sure that our historical trends, we're not going to see a dip in that. Expenditures by fund type. As you can see, the top graph there, those are our capital projects. Those are our capital improvement programs that are spiking as they should as we ebb and flow in and out of different construction projects. Debt service, that second one down, so excited to see that going down. So we're going to talk about later, you know, we just paid off our major initial capital funding that we had from the exception of the city. We've got a couple more that we'll highlight later that we're paying those down as well. Special revenue, and again, our general fund expenditures. We are in an inflationary period, and we, like everyone else, are facing increase in costs. So that's what you're seeing here. Ad valorem revenue, or as I like to make sure everyone knows, I call it real estate tax revenues because ad valorem is just a term that governmental entities use by Florida statute. These are our July 1 preliminary values. There's a big asterisk there, and there's a big note. We have spoken directly with the property appraiser recently, and we, like every other taxable authority in Lee County, are going to see a decline in our taxable values from July 1, and we'll talk about the timeline, probably into 2024. And those are just for the Hurricane Ian impacted structures. And we've been talking about it all along. If it's uninhabitable or if the structure's no longer there, it's not going to be taxed. So they are gathering, the property appraiser is gathering data, but he's let us all know that these numbers will decline. And normally by Florida statute, the number does not move, your taxable value number does not move from July 1 through till October or maybe later on in the year. It moves very little. So that's a number you can typically count on getting about 96% of. This year, we're going to have to follow it a little more cautiously. We believe it's going to be a decline, we're being told, so we're going to watch that. We're going to monitor how that happens. We're going to make a game plan for that. As you can see, some of the entities, other drops, Sanibel, Fort Myers Beach, these are their initial taxable value drop. A lot of their structures, again, the structures are what we're talking about, not the land, just the structures. Those are going to be moving as well.
42%, wow.
Yes, I know. And if you've seen or been out to Fort Myers Beach or seen the pictures of that, you have to know this is probably going to be moving down somewhat. But we're going to watch it. Hurricane Ian impact on the 2023 real estate taxable values. The value that we're basing our budget on now is as of January 1, 2023. That's Florida statute. So that's the number we have to deal with, and that's the number the property appraiser is grappling with. Now, the fact that the timing of the hurricane, that it hit in September, and then he only had till January to do that value, that's where we're having some trouble with the amount of data he's trying to gather with respect to for the structures that are potentially damaged by the hurricane. Taxable values are going to decline in the upcoming year below that of July 1st estimate. The city is required by Florida statute to budget at least 95% of the July 1 taxable value estimate. As the taxable values decline, which we have been told they will, real estate tax revenue will be lower than budgeted amount. This is the first time, I don't want to say how long I've been doing this, but let's just say it's over 20 years. And this is the first time I've seen that. And we know it's just the uniqueness of the timing of the hurricane, and we don't think, we're hearing from the property appraiser, not a long-term impact on us, and we have some other positive things to talk about. But we are in a unique situation, and we really need to be cautious. We've heard some optimistic things, and we do have some things to be optimistic about, but we need to be cautious with respect to our real estate revenue this year. The scariest point is the last one, is there are no estimates for the potential reductions are available. Now, when we talk about that, But the city of Bonita Springs is unique, and we've got some strong positive things going for us that some of our other sister cities and entities don't have, and we feel for them so much. We know we had a lot of new construction out on our islands. That new construction held up very well to the storm. So some of our structures on our island properties just did not have the significant impact that some of the other islands you see. So that's a good thing for us. That means we will tend probably not to move as low as they will. The property appraiser has indicated to us that he's been reaching out to condominium management companies to obtain updated information. We talked a couple times before that the biggest concern that the property appraiser has about the tax rolls are unreported condominium damage. So they're trying to reach out to see if these entities are inhabitable or not. Now, the next point is very important. Parcel taxable value will include the value of the land. This is great for everyone, the property owner and for us. Because as you all know, if it was an older structure and it's on a big piece of land here, a lot of times the land was more valuable than the structure. And we're hearing so many reports of sales after Ian that the sale was for higher than pre-Ian value, and sometimes substantially, and they're just getting the land because there's no structure there. That tells you our taxable values, our real estate market. In my mind, it says it's healthy, it's coming back. I mean, they do have to rebuild the structures, and I feel so bad for everyone, lost their structure. Don't mean to in any way negate their pain or their loss, but when we talk about, financially recouping money or being in a position where, you can handle it, the land is really what's going to help us. It's going to help everyone, and I think you all have probably heard reports of that as well. Again, that will help the impact of the taxable value be less because the land value. And typically when you think about condominiums, you don't think of a piece of land, but condos are on land. So therefore, we've been confirmed that that will impact it. Now, what we're being told too, and this last point, I want to say, absent anything major economically or financially negative in nature, we're being told that our January 2024 property values are anticipated to increase. That's a good thing. They are saying they think we're going to bounce back. Again, because of the city, our structural impacts were limited somewhat when you compare us to Sanibel or Fort Myers Beach, which may take a longer time to come back. And we feel for them, but I'm here to present to you all, what your situation is and what our situation is as we look forward. So it's cautiously positive. The timeline for the 2023 real estate taxable values. Your individual parcel preliminary values will be available with the truth and millage notice. That's August 24th. You all are property owners here. Every year at August 24th, you get that statement. It's not a tax bill. It's for informational purposes only, but it's your first look at your taxable values for your property that you own in Lee County. And again, this timeline is by Florida statutes. Now, your tax bill will not be mailed out until November. We feel, and again, we've confirmed this with the property appraiser, that the gathering of damage and the movement of the taxable value number will continue until the tax bills are received, and possibly after that into, we don't talk about this a lot, but there's a value adjustment board period that can go into 2024. We just want to let you know of the potential timeline. Again, we're monitoring. We're getting monthly reports from the tax collector, the property appraiser. We're watching it, and we'll make you aware of, as soon as we get some data, we'll bring you guys up to date on it. The 2022 city property tax refund data. We've been talking about Florida statutes implemented the ability for a property owner who had paid their taxes for 2022, which was from January through December, to get a tax refund for the portion their property was uninhabitable after Ian struck. So we've confirmed with the tax collector that the last number we gave you, roughly $123,000 on 1,580 parcels, is holding. They have assured us that they don't think that number is going to move significantly. I think the reason why this number might be lower than maybe what we see next year is because of the the timeline. And again, they had until, I think it was April 1st, to file their refund claim. So I think people were sort of slow, the average property owner were slow to come to reckoning with that and weren't really sure. Maybe they were hoping they'd go back in to the property sooner. We'll see how that goes, but I do think this number is a little low compared to what we'll see next year. Again, the tax collector has until September 1st by Florida statutes to notify the city of the total amount of refunds. Again, we've spoken to them and we don't feel that's going to significantly move. This slide kind of gave me pause this year because of the big asterisk and the fact that we are displaying our July 1 number there. You saw the percentage that it moved on a prior slide. We do think this number, again, we're being told it's going to come down somewhat. We're going to watch it and see what happens with it. But, you know, as you can see, the trend has been healthy going up. And we are hearing that next year, when we're here at the same time, and we're talking January 2024 numbers, hopefully we're going to be in a more optimistic position. This is my most exciting slide. This is the taxable value for our downtown area. As everyone's aware, when we did a lot of infrastructure improvements in downtown, we partnered with Lee County and we borrowed some funds to do those improvements. Our interlocal agreement with Lee County was based upon growth in taxable value, taking the revenues from that growth, putting them aside and paying the debt. And it's still growing. So with this year, with this growth, Lee County will have fully paid their amount that they owed us, which was great. Because again, it's growth paying for growth, paying for the infrastructure that was going to benefit them. This was a win-win situation for us and for the county because it proved a positive impact, as well as the other local businesses and things that are going on in the downtown area. This is the 2022 allocation of total real estate tax bill. We like to present this every year. This shows that Bonita Springs is about 6% of the total tax bill that's paid out, and these are the other taxing authorities that receive their share of that. And this is based upon your taxable value and the millage rate that you set. Same thing for all the other entities that are listed there. We did a preliminary real estate tax projection. These are for taxable value levers for 3 single-family homes or some other type of residential unit that has a Save Our Homes. We pick Save Our Homes because we can predict the movement of the taxable value because it's outlined in Florida statute. It can't go up higher than the 3% you see here. This year it will go up 3% because obviously inflation was higher than that, so it's the lesser of, excuse me. So these would be the increases for the value of houses there if we held the tax rate steady, which is what you have in your draft, and we'll be looking for your direction at the next meeting on that. And of course, if you'd like to discuss it today, there'll be at the end of our time, there's time for you all to discuss anything you'd like to in a budget and any direction you'd like to give us. We wanted to do a FEMA update on Hurricane Ian because it does impact this budget and it will continue to impact this budget as we head through the process for it. The first 75 days of debris removal is currently anticipated to be reimbursed at 100%. That is just great news. We did have to provide the cash out, as you'll see in a minute, until we get reimbursed for the FEMA, and that's what our reserves are for. And staff is also working with our consultant to ensure the highest percentage of reimbursement is attained. We'll be moving through this probably 4 or 5 years. I'm sad to say, but I'm so glad the money's there. So when applicable, the city's match requirement could be up to 12.5%. How it works is FEMA pays 75, and then the city and the state share 50% split of the remainder, which our portion's 12.5 and the state puts in 12.5. Future budget changes. We wanted to present this to you all before we incorporated it. And if there are any discussion or any feedback, please later on let's chat about this. We utilized our operating and our disaster reserves for hurricane, we're planned to use them for Hurricane Ian, just for a cash flow purposes to go ahead and because FEMA is a reimbursement grant, so we have to spend the money and then we put in for reimbursement. So what we've done here is we're showing your level of operating and disaster reserves that are projected here in your budget, and then we're showing your Hurricane Ian activity to date. This is what we have spent to date, $8,860,000 on expenditures for Ian. That was primarily debris removal. And then we've also received, as we talked about earlier, a significant amount of money from FEMA and some from the insurance company, and that's meant to help us do these repairs and recoveries. So we're reducing your $6.4 million total reserves, and that would take your reserves that you're going to start out this budget year with about $2,450,000. Now, when we look at that, we also need to remember that from a cash flow standpoint, we also are projected to start this budget year with an unassigned fund balance of a little over $4.2 million. That's cash flow that will help us if and when, hopefully, we do not have anything occur this year that's unanticipated, such as a hurricane or anything of those natures, but those are available to help us. And when we talk about if our budgeted revenue is lower, hopefully our other revenues will rise to the occasion. Our interest money, our sales tax money, maybe that'll keep going, and so we won't end up with a deficit there. But if we do, we have these funds available to us. So we like to make sure we let you know we have a plan in case we need it. Again, continuing with future budget changes, you've heard me talk a little bit about state revenue estimates. As of the draft of this budget, were not released. We're going to look to the state, they do it every year, to give us numbers for half-cent sales tax, to give us numbers for local fuel tax, communication services tax. A lot of our major revenues, their economists are really very good at predicting and giving us budget guidelines. So we're going to incorporate those as they give us as we move through our budget. We're going to incorporate any updates on our property taxable values that we have. And we make a statement here, if needed, if the city could utilize the operating reserves or the unassigned fund balance to provide for any real estate revenue reductions. So we have a plan in place. We are also going to be monthly monitoring the FEMA reimbursement program, which will assist in replenishing the reserves. We talked about the reserves we just reduced just for cash flow purposes. When we get that money from FEMA, it goes right back into those reserves. Our general fund, this is a history of our unassigned fund balance. Our preliminary estimate, and I cannot stress enough preliminary estimate because we're looking forward to September 30th, 2024. That's a long time in the future. So that number will not be precise. Typically, we go a little higher because our budgets, we budget fairly conservative, us and the state, so we exceed those budgets a little bit. For our revenue and expenditures, hopefully, we don't expend everything we have. So that creates a little more of a surplus to help us replenish this for things that when we get impacted by our inflation, when we get our bids and things of that nature. Those are realistic, everyone having the same thing. But this puts us in a position where we can help provide cash flow to keep moving forward with the priorities we have in our budget. Debt service annual requirements. We have 2 loans remaining, one for our land acquisition that we did in 2020, and then the downtown redevelopment. You heard me talk glowingly about the downtown redevelopment from a taxable value standpoint. It has really worked and done a fantastic job for what it was meant to do with respect to this debt service. These are the 2 remaining annual payments that we have, and you see the debt balance down there at the bottom. Very, very low for the size entity we are, and we're very proud of that. The footnote there is just talking about Lee County's contribution, and once we max out Lee County's contribution to the debt service, then we'll pay the remainder of that. But really, very low balances for both of those loans. Continuation budget. You have this handout in your packet. I apologize about it being so small on this overhead, but I wanted to just put it up here so we can talk about it. A couple slides later, we're going to open it all up and for you all to discuss anything about the budget you'd like, of course, any direction you'd like to give us. But we specifically, on these items, need feedback. We want direction with respect to if you would like to include all of these items in your budget. There's a continuation budget, excuse me, let me go back. At the top, you'll see there, what we present to you each year is new request, and then we tell you what percentage for continuing services we are over last year. And we're roughly about 3% increase year over year with the same level of service. And then these are new requests that are listed here. I did want to point out, we are an entity that insures structures and property, just like the rest of the state. So we have received a 150% increase in premiums for our property. I've talked to a lot of other local governments and other people that are in, anyone that insures anything, any structures, they're in a similar situation. I don't think we have to go into anything about the insurance industry as Florida as a whole. But this is just what we're facing. So we wanted to call that out and make sure that you all were aware that we are similar to other entities are faced with those kind of increases.
Is there any chance of bidding for next year or something?
We can look at that, definitely. We are with the Florida League of Cities. They are a nonprofit insurance entity, but I will say they are just like every other insurance company. They have to go out to the market for reinsurance. So that's where we're getting passed through this. And if you will, the Florida League of Cities have figured out that some of their entities were underinsured. They're really, this hurricane has hit them hard, to be quite honest. And so when they go out to get reinsurance, now they're, if you will, riskier to the market. So they're getting hit with those increases. So they're passing them through. We definitely should look at different options down the road. But with the Florida League of Cities, the fact that they are a nonprofit and they just do cities, other cities such as ourselves, we're in a good pool, I believe.
Mr.
Yes,
Mayor,
City Attorney, please.
I don't want to be shilling for the league, but one of the things that I would point out is because the league is operated and managed by a trust
Yes.
controlled by the cities in Florida, when we have novel legal issues, like several years ago we had the ADA lawsuits with respect to the web portals and documents that are stored online, because of that familiarity with local government, they paid for legal defenses that were not covered by the insurance. So there are some advantages that, I don't know what the market is for other possible insurance companies, but there is a slight advantage to having one that specializes in the work that the cities do for that reason.
Nigel, go ahead.
Lisa, question. Considering the fact that we're looking at upgrading, repairing facilities, do you think there'd be a substantial improvement in our rates or risk by making those improvements, or is it going to be just a kind of a trade-off? We have to do it, but
We do have to do it. The fact that we're with the Florida League of Cities and they actually have a pool, so all of our property is put in by the different pools. So it's weighted somewhat with respect to the age of the property, and the Florida League of Cities comes out every few years and looks at all of our property and looks at the age of them and kind of values it. So that gives us, a realistic value to start from.
do you like the 4-point inspections like you would on a?
Yes, they do.
That's
They
only
cover.
every few years, not on an annual basis.
No, not on an annual basis.
Thank you.
They may change that going forward, though, because we're all in a new insurance environment right now. So we'll see what they do. I mean, they're out in front of this, and I know they're hurting. They know everybody's hurting just like they are.
If we do these improvements, then the insurance will go up in price because they're insuring a higher valued property. If the property goes up in value, then the insurance
But
goes up.
their risk goes down,
Yes, if the structure
You harden
is
the
How
more,
much the risk go down?
because you're hardening the sites and bring them up to
Some of
code.
them, yeah, okay.
Yep.
I'd make a comment about Little Hickory Island. There must be 500 condominium units unoccupied. how did you get your 8% increase in the value when they haven't been lived in 9 months now?
That's what the asterisk is for, that
That's what the
Lisa's been talking about.
So
And it is, it's not isolated.
now I just got my reimbursed, I got $1,800 back on my $7,700 property tax.
Oh, nice.
Just got that this week. Now, that comes out of the city's budget too.
It did. It was, you were in that figure we show.
Okay,
But
already?
they are, the property appraiser, I mean, I can't tell you what a tough predicament he is in Lee County right now. I mean, because if it's not reported to him and they can't go inside the structures, how do they know, they can't make a call about blanketly, that they're all not inhabitable. So they're trying really hard. They've been working on it for months and months to try to gather some data. So they're still pushing for that, to gather data that will help them properly value any structure.
So I can't live in my place, so I should call them up and tell them that?
Remember we talked about on their website, exactly, you can either phone call, or there's a thing to click right on their website, report your Hurricane Ian damage, and they want you to go in there and report that you cannot, whatever status is of your structure, yes, they want you to do that. It is, so again, I'm gonna open this up for discussion. But we are, at the end of the day, are going to ask you all for direction for all the items that are located on this page. And I believe, let's see, what's next on our agenda is the capital improvement program, to go through that.
I think
Matt's going to take over for that.
what Lisa's saying is these items, if you're comfortable with them, we'd look for direction to include them, because you have the continuing services budget, and then you have these additional things that came up through the budgeting process. So we would be looking for an affirmative direction one way or the other.
So I would like to make a motion that the additional information requested, segments under law enforcement for the 2 deputies in civilian community service aid position going into the next budget, be included.
I think it would just be looking for direction, because we didn't notice this as a meeting.
Yeah.
So, no,
I think we did.
did we?
Did we notice it?
As a workshop.
Well, we'll be looking for direction, so if
So that's
it's
the
the council as a whole to give us a
You
direction.
can still make motions, they just can't be for final actions, like.
So that's the direction that I would offer.
I'd like to,
And, somebody explain what a civilian community service aid position is for $100,000?
Yes, sir. So that's essentially, this kind of gives us 3 officers instead of 2, but what a community service aid, they can't actively do arrests, and so they do all the administrative stuff. They can do tickets, they can do accidents, they can do reports, they can do everything a police officer can do except for when you get to use of force stuff. So when you see the folks who are at the accident site before, sometimes in like a voice car, it's not a voice officer, but it's a similar thing. They get there first, and then that opens up the police to be doing police business.
Is the voice still in operation or no?
It might be in Lee County, but not in Bonita, not in our unit.
I've never
But I think
seen
they are still technically around in Lee County, though, to answer your question on that. But,
It's
so,
just an added person.
yeah, so instead of doing 3 people, we're doing like 2.5, but it's still, again, we're running, 60,000 person city and a 40,000 person force, so 2.5 is kind of, we're low
How many
ball.
officers are in Chicago?
Oh, hundreds.
And
Yeah.
how many murders? do they
Thousands,
have?
thousands.
How many murders do they have?
know, right?
Do they need more police? I don't know. They just, New York City got a new police officer
Lisa?
yesterday.
sir, may I ask Lisa
Yes.
a question? So, I'm sorry, it was a few minutes late, but is the strategic priority still in the same order?
Yes, well, we did some rearranging just before our adoption of our current budget. So this is the order that we were given and that was incorporated in your budget last year. So if you'd like to discuss those or move those around or do anything, we definitely would love to.
Oh, you
have
know-
that feedback.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
no.
No, go ahead. Are you taking general, at this point, Derek, it's appropriate for anything that you would like to discuss that if it's not on here. So for example, you know, if you want a placeholder for something like that,
Correct.
Yes,
This is
exactly,
our preliminary budget meeting, so anything that you guys want to see put into the final budget so that you see the complete total, this is the time to start raising those items. It's
Okay.
not
Yes, please.
it's not the end of the
process, but
show,
it's
but
the
if you
beginning,
have
first
initial
act.
ideas.
But we, just to be clear, and yes, it's a workshop, but, you know, we would be looking for, you know, for some direction on the things that were outside of the continuing budget, if you're comfortable with those as well. I know your motion was, or we don't want motions, but your direction was specific to 2 items. If council's comfortable with the other items, we want to know that.
Well, and I actually had another one that I didn't discuss, and it's putting the electric underground at Murney. So Murney Fields, the soccer field's right off 75. The reason that we've never been able to put bathrooms there and we've never been able to put stands there is because the electrical lines that run over. So it's a short patch, and I'm gonna try to work with the state to figure out a way to get them to pressure FPL to do it, where we could figure out a way to get that underground, and then that opens up that entire property to be able to be a better accessible soccer situation. And if y'all don't know, we have very limited soccer. We don't have, our middle school doesn't have a soccer field. They're always trying to get it, you know, the YMCA has it, we have a Wildcats and an adult league. So we have like 5 leagues and no soccer fields, but this would be a pretty significant improvement. So I'd like to just put in, it doesn't even have to be a large amount, but something as a token placeholder until we can continue the conversation with FPL for what it might cost. So I don't know what that would be, $70,000, something like that as a placeholder.
I think we could, the next item on the agenda is the capital improvement stuff, which is really where that might be, where we could address that. But if you're comfortable with what's presented thus far with the additions, we'd like to understand whether you are or not.
What's the storm?
Could I make-
expenditure?
Could I make a
90,000.
comment?
Chris's.
Could I make a comment, please?
Yeah,
Uh,
sure,
Lisa-
That
I'm
was
sorry.
next, but that's okay.
Oh, well, I can't see, so if somebody was ahead of me, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Lisa, could you go back to the unassigned fund balance slide?
The history of the unassigned fund balance?
Right.
Yes.
Right. Is there anything from the Florida League of Cities or the state that would take the unassigned fund balance and compare it to population? We all understand that inflation's been low except for this year. Sorry about the noise, I'm close to an airport. But if you take the September 30th, 2015 number of 3,723,000 and update it for inflation since then, you end up about 4,004,000. And we're looking at a preliminary estimate September 30th of 2024 of 4,003,000. But we've got population growth at the same time. I'm just wondering if there's anything that would be a guidance as to what cities typically should have an unassigned fund balance, given their population and given the scope of what they're doing with their government. So that's one question I have.
There might be best practices from League of Cities on that.
There is. There's Florida Governmental Financial Officers Association issues some preliminary guidance, and the population is definitely one of the factors. But more importantly, it's the functionality of the local government. For example, we're government light. So with respect to, we just don't have full-time equivalents that say a full service city does. We don't have a utility. We don't have an inside fire department. We don't have police. Those functions tend to be more personnel, payroll, labor intensive. And those are the ones where you really need your, and it's more like an operating and or disaster reserve is the figure that you'd use for that to help keep the lights on, to help pay the things. Because we're government light, we function a little uniquely. Like some of the entities, if you have a storm hit and you don't have any structures, or not many structures there, then how can they pay utility and keep going? Are they gonna pay utility when they don't have a structure? So we don't have that, and we're really fortunate in that we don't have that exposure. So with that, with additional exposure, the functionality is where the increase in your reserves or your unassigned fund balance need would come. Historically, the figure they use is about 4 months of unassigned fund balance, and that's after you have your operating or your disaster reserves. We're pretty close to that. So, you know, again, absent any major economic, environmental, or financial, you know, disaster or anomaly, if you will, I think we're in pretty good shape with respect to that, and we're well in line with what the experts say.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Lisa, I'm not putting you on the spot, so I'm kind of yeah, so I am, of course. But on opinion, I know we increased our reserve budget, and that turned out to be a good thing. Considering what our revenues are, the financial condition of the city right now, another little increase. Would you be against that?
I'm never, I'd be hard pressed to be against having more savings, given especially, you know, what we faced the last, now it's 6 years with Irma and Ian. If it's something you guys give us direction to do, we'd want to take a look at that and talk about it and think about it seriously if it's something you want us to consider.
When are we gonna get a better idea how much ad valorem tax we're gonna get? In August or
You saw the
trim?
timeline there. We hope, we pressed, Arlene and I were on a conference call with the property appraiser, and I must say that his office has just been outstandingly informative and whatnot. I pressed him hard on a date, and you can see he doesn't have the data. So it's hard he doesn't have the data. He's still gathering the data, his office, they're still gathering the data. So until they gather the data, they can't possibly give anyone estimates. So I don't like to use terms that are used a lot, unprecedented, but that's where we're at. And it's a combination of the timing of the storm, the Florida statutes timeline that we're all hemmed in by. So when he has it, I feel confident that he'll give it to us as soon as he has it. But, you know, I can't say, and he can't say either from the conversation we had with him, what that timeline is going to be. Because keep in mind, we were talking about whether or not it would be part of the value adjustment board. Well, to tax somebody for a structure that doesn't exist, that's just an error in billing. So that as soon as he get notified, he's got to change it and do it. So that's it's just like billing somebody for service they didn't get. Again, the land is still there, so he has to assess the land value as of that time, and that will help us. But, we just are where we are, and I wish I had a better answer for you, and I wish I had a better timeline, but we're going to watch and see.
I'm afraid that the 500 units on Bonita Beach are not gonna be occupied for the rest of the year.
I know, and I'm so sorry for those
And
people who have lost their homes or lost their second homes.
It's gotta be $250 million worth of property that's not gonna be taxed.
Well, you'd be well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all.
I know. I don't want to comment about an individual structure, and he would not, and we pressed him pretty heavily too.
Yeah,
He's not in a position to. It just doesn't have the data to do that, knowing with any confidence.
we gotta be very conservative,
Cautious.
cautious.
And we've got some positive financial indicators that we've been talking about that'll help us, bear through, and we'll watch and we'll report.
The trim notice ought to be pretty accurate, huh?
No, sir.
No?
No, sir. Because that'll be the first look at every parcel moves differently. Highest and best use. Every parcel could move it differently. The only ones we know that we show you every year that you could use is the taxable value, the Save Our Homes. That's going to move up the lesser of 3% or inflation. So this year we know that's a 3% if it's still inhabitable and if it's still a structure. Now, if it's not, then that number
Still
changes.
get the property value taxed. The land value is still gonna be taxed.
Yes, it has to be. Legally, it has to be. And it will be reassessed based upon what's happening in the market right now with respect to, and now, again, we're talking, the reason why we're looking at the level of uncertainty, it's January 1st, 2023. That's the value we're dealing with by Florida statutes. So next year, January 2024, a lot of sales will have occurred in that we're all hearing about. So that will change the complexion completely, and all the data will be in about the structure damage at that point.
Yes, sir.
So what's appropriate as far as asking staff to look into increasing the reserves as part of a study to suggest to us?
I think that's really where we are in the meeting. I know
That's what I'm
we've
asking.
gone a little bit backwards here, but what we're asking, we're at the operational budget is really where we are, and we've presented it with a 3% increase for the services you have. We have some additional increases here we're looking for direction on. Councilman Purdon mentioned a couple. I think we would, if that's something you'd like us to look into, that's the direction we're looking for you. Are you comfortable with what's shown? Are there any additional things? That's what we're looking to understand.
And generally, a consensus.
Yeah,
If
a
there's
consensus.
one person that's asking if we could really get a consensus that the
Well,
entire council is.
I'm asking council if they'd feel comfortable with looking at, again, given the situation that we're going to have a flow of funds continuing for the short term.
I agree with that. If we can put any money away for a year or whatever, till
Which
we
brings
get
me
over
to
this.
the point I wanted to make, like
What?
20 minutes ago. Are we still in order with the strategic priorities? Are we keeping that order, or are we shifting things?
We haven't changed the strategic priorities from the way they've been laid out previously.
But I
When we-
believe we
when-
should,
when we-
because, I mean, Nigel seems to be saying strengthen and the mayor enhance our finances. So I would like to consider shifting some of these priorities around.
I thought the priorities are all equal, aren't they?
Do we need to do
No.
that?
I mean,
You can, if you'd like.
they are, it's a group of priorities.
I think we can all collectively agree on fiscal responsibility without having to necessarily dive into changing all the priorities. 'Cause
Right.
I think
Well,
that's a
but-
larger conversation than sitting here right now,
But
because
community aesthetics comes before.
community aesthetics is a very important component of a city. How it looks is a very important component of a city.
Yes, but how it operates is even more important. So strengthening finances, I would put.
Right,
City
again,
attorney. please.
larger conversation.
No, I just want to, I think the question that Councilwoman Carr is asking, are the priorities ranked listed? Is it
Ah.
1 through 7? If they are not ranked listed, then they're all equal. I think she's
That's-
asking for clarification on that.
They are ranked, and they have been in this ranking for several years, and we can certainly have that discussion. The budget is put together using those as a guidepost. Where it primarily comes into play, other than perhaps the item that Councilman Fullock has been talking about with reserves, really, from my perspective, the rubber meets the road in the capital improvement plan, which is our next item.
Okay.
Now, there aren't always opportunities in the capital improvement plan for some of those items, which is, where he's talking about the contingency and increasing that. So you can have that discussion. That's where we are, because we're talking about the operational side of the budget, but I don't know that it's really necessary to open up the strategic priorities, because you'll see when we get to the capital side, there's a pretty consistent ranking there
Emphasis.
going on.
Okay, thank you.
So we're looking for consensus that, the budget is proposed with the increases that are shown on this slide is okay to continue to move forward with, and if there's consensus on increasing the reserve amount.
Yes. Consensus on reserve increase.
Do we need to vote on
discuss it
that?
Later.
No votes.
We're just.
Clear consensus.
Consensus for discussion on what that looks like.
Yes on the reserves, and there was another motion on the floor. Is there consensus on the additional information requested there? Was there consensus? on
Yes.
that too? Good. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, you all squared away?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next portion really is the capital improvement plan, which if you turn to page 75 in your binder, like, kind of stole some of my thunder, Councilwoman Carr, but our CIP is presented, it advances a lot of the projects that we previously had identified. It is grouped by the strategic priorities as they were prioritized. So for example, on page 75, the very first thing you see in bold, the very first row, other than the title blocks, is improved stormwater management, and then in parentheses it says first strategic priority. If you thumb through a little further, you'll get into the transportation, and then ultimately the other priorities that could apply to capital projects. We've presented it, like I said, it really is mostly a continuation of projects that council had already voted on, either through the workshop process of the previous months, or the existing CIP. So we're presenting it to you. I think if you read over it and have any questions, or if there are things you'd like to include, like Councilman Purdon mentioned about the high voltage power lines, this would be the opportunity to have that conversation.
So yeah, I'd just like to put a placeholder so we have something in there, and then we can have the discussion, see how much it costs, and see what we can get to pay for it.
Did you have a specific dollar amount, or?
Honestly, I mean, if you want to keep it round, you can say 100,000, but I mean, I think honestly with 50, my intent is we're going to find out the price, and then hopefully we can utilize state partners to pay for it.
For something like that, we would probably put it in a year further out so that it wouldn't directly.
So an out year is good, that's fine. Yep. But just so we have something on there, notating we're working in that direction.
And let Ellie know to start working.
It's all one.
A question for you, Matt, on page 76, the home elevation project. Where did those numbers come from? And I'm all in favor, because I think it's a great program, but where did these numbers come from?
They were, and I don't recall the exact number on the home, but it was an approximate number based on the number of respondents in the area, and a kind of for lack of a better term, a plug number for home elevation. So there is obviously will be variation. I was just on a phone call with Ellie, and a consultant that we have that has done quite a few of these home elevations in other parts of the state, and just to get a sense of what this is. So they assisted us in helping develop that plug number. I just don't recall off the top of my head, but it's a planning number. I think it's north of 250,000 per home. But obviously, if your home is 10,000 square feet, that number would be much larger. So it's a blended type of number.
And is that number based on the number of replies that we've received?
To a degree, it's not entirely based on the number of replies, because you didn't have that much response. I mean, we had great response, don't get me wrong, but it's also just based on a number of 15 homes in this area. So it is blended in a way.
The reason I'm asking is I don't think 80% of the population that could be affected by this even knows that program exists. So.
Well, it doesn't yet. It's a grant application.
So government light may be numbers light.
Well, the grant isn't.
No, it's a 75-25, am I not correct? 75%?
It is, and we've identified.
25% comes to us.
And we've identified that 25% match is coming from the HUD dollars that Lee County is administering, because those are some of the few dollars that you could use. But of course, that would require, we're years out from some of these things, and that will require, that's presumptive on our part, but, we know those dollars can be used for that, and so that would be an ask that we would have of the CBDG program as they flesh out those funding lists, and same with other sister communities.
And Councilman, that's a multi-year project.
Right.
So for example, for the Downs Quinn Imperial, as years went by, the city council authorized additional municipal funds towards that project beyond to the home buyout program. So those
Raising
are
homes?
options. So
No. Buyout.
for
Okay.
buyout, for buyout. But as we move forward in the process, there'll be public outreach meetings, and there might be, that would be a consideration of council in future budgets if you wanted to commit more dollars, if there was such a interest in the program.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
That it?
Ms.
No, I
Mayor?
have.
Yes,
I wanted to propose a traffic study for council's consideration. I've had quite a few emails in regards to the intersection of 41 and Pelican Landing. The Publix, there to their entrance at Pelican Landing. There's a lot of traffic accidents and such there. So I was wanting to see if we could do a placeholder for a traffic study.
I'd second that.
Well, we're not making motions, we're just discussing.
If there's consensus.
Consensus. I consent.
yeah,
Thank you.
I too consent.
yeah, the-
I think
It's a
the
study,
real
yeah.
problem is the curve before Pelican Landing, Old 41.
Well, and that's great, but that's not what she's talking about.
I know, but, I mean,
The study will explain what can and can't be done with the
Right.
intersection.
Yeah, I'm just asking for a study.
That's a professional
well,
look at it.
okay, a placeholder.
Correct.
Yes.
As stated.
Okay,
And we'll
anything
get a
else?
price on that?
We can.
Could I ask Matt a question?
Yes,
Matt, the money that Florida is providing for the stormwater system through Ed and Botana's efforts was about 5.4 million, if I remember correctly. I noticed in the CIP budget that the improvements on Paradise are scheduled for like 27 and 28. Is there a possibility of being able to move those improvements up in the schedule, given that we have so much equipment out there already mobilized for clearing the ground and construction of roads and so forth? Could we is it possible to move that up to give the people that already live out off of Paradise some relief with respect to the pedestrian pathways, bicycle pathways in the road?
I think we can certainly take a look at advancing some of the timing. I do want to point out, we already have some money actually carrying over for that. It's a small amount, but these projects, that's a large project to even design and lay out. And so it will take time to do the work. So the timing may not be perfectly characterized like, that you would be able to finish it should funding be available at the same time as everything that's happening, in the next 3 years, because it is a large project. But we can certainly look at trying to compress that time schedule a little bit, to make it happen sooner than later. But yes, right now it's.
Okay. Thank you very much.
all right.
I too have gotten a lot of calls on Paradise, but it's a process to do a development.
$13 million too.
Is that Paradise, is that a 50-foot road right away or 30 feet or? They keep saying it's narrow.
The road is narrow as it's built. It's standard width, but really what you have is open drainage on both sides of the road, and so part of the
Puddles there, you mean, or open drainage?
swales,
Swales?
ditches. They're almost to the point of being ditches in places, and so this project that Councilman Corey's talking about, it contemplated, and that's why it's expensive. It contemplated enclosed drainage pipes, and then putting pedestrian infrastructure over it, which would alleviate, and reconstruction of the road, so it would alleviate the concern you're talking about. What was your other question there?
I was just wondering whether the vegetation was out towards the road or no?
No, it's just,
It's the swales.
as far as the right of way.
Off of the road, you're in trouble.
Correct, and that's really what you've got this. The swales are close enough. I think it creates that feeling for folks that there's not an option. If you build this
I
project,
did talk to the lieutenant about checking, somebody complained about the speed of these trucks going down there, and he said he was gonna out and take care of that, check that.
The right-of-way width, I don't know it off the top of my head, Mr. Mayor, but it's wider than 50 feet. Because when we were looking at
Yeah.
this project, I know it could fit a much larger footprint.
But if people have trouble with this truck speeding, then call the sheriff's department. They'll come out and ticket people, or that's their job.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I actually brought that up because I also received an email, and Arlene is already a city manager.
I didn't hear Ben complain about it. I figured maybe something happened.
But that if they're speeding,
Yeah.
police will be out.
Yeah,
sheriff's
their new
officers will
lieutenant
be
is
out.
very reactive. Very good. I've talked to him several times, and he's doing, he's on our side, put it that way. Yes, Jesse, anything?
Yeah, just one more placeholder. And I don't know, again, that we'll need money because I don't know how the relationship might work. But I know both Chris Corey and I have been talking about the horrible Wi-Fi in the city numerous times. And I don't know what those solutions look like. And I know staff is working and looking on some. And I know the IT committee is working on some. And, I know there's a lot of entities that have reached out to us. But I think it might be smart for us to put a placeholder for what it might potentially cost for us to be into a relationship to address our Wi-Fi and broadband on a city level. And again, it might be, the deal might be Xfinity says, hey, we'll actually pay for it, we just want the business. I don't know how it works, I don't know. But point being, if there's gonna be a charge or a cost for it, then we don't have to figure that out and come up with it in that current budget year. So if we're gonna look at it next year, we put $100,000 into it this year. If we don't have to use it, fine. But if we end up having money that we have to pony up, at least we have something to start with. So that'll at least get us moving on officially addressing the bad Wi-Fi throughout the city.
I would support that.
Well, I think we have a lot of other priorities before that, but infrastructure and
That's a placeholder, but now if you feel that there's something that's more important, this is your time to do that. That's what we're all doing. So I'm saying I feel Wi-Fi is important, and I think we should consider it. If Laura, if you have something that you feel is important, you have just as
do.
much opportunity. Okay, so
Infrastructure.
go ahead. You can go next. Right now, we're talking about Wi-Fi. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody
Keep
else on
going.
Wi-Fi? All right. Okay, so can we do that for,
The electric chargers, I think, is gonna be taken care of by Ford and General Motors and Tesla are all getting together. They're gonna get electric chargers everywhere, it looks like. Now, where we're gonna get the electricity to send the charger, I don't know, that's a whole new ball of wax.
so,
But,
okay, great.
uh,
So for the
other
placeholder,
people are doing things like, the broadband or whatever, that might be taken over by somebody else. But,
we need
money is a placeholder, if we
Yeah.
don't spend it, we don't
don't
spend
spend it,
it.
exactly. So,
Mayor, Council, I believe we previously did have a placeholder last fiscal year because there was an idea that there might be some funding opportunities. So there is potentially $250,000, I believe, in the carryover
Yes, we
for
were
CIP.
hopeful it would be grant funded, and that's what it's identified as now,
It's-
but it is in there.
It's obligated, though, it's not obligated as,
so
We
could
do not have a grant in
Grant.
place.
Okay, so could we
Hoping.
so we could just change it to $250,000 without the grant, and then if we don't use it, we don't use it, but now we're not tied up to getting the funding, but we still have money in place if we have to get in a relationship that does inevitably cost us money. And then we address it this year.
yes, that does, it impacts the budget a little bit differently because it's not as grant money, but if that's the consensus, that would be the change. It'd be the 250, it's still in the line item, but it would switch from grant funding to
General fund.
general fund money. Are you looking for it to be a placeholder in a year out or in?
No, I'd like to do it, I mean, honestly, if we can substantively as a group right here between the 7 of us, make Wi-Fi better next year, I'd rather do it next year. I don't wanna wait 2 or 3 years, we have horrible Wi-Fi. So if we have the ability to put the placeholder and put us on a path to potentially address it within a year, I think that's most advantageous for everybody. So what do you need from us?
I disagree. I think we should stay with how we're proceeding. I mean, we already have it in the budget for $250,000. So
That doesn't
let's
help
see
us if
how-
we get into a relationship with somebody this year. That's if we get grant money. I'm saying if grant money doesn't come around and we decide to address it, now our hands aren't tied. Oh, we don't have money for it, and then we're gonna have to move money to address it. Now the money's there, and if we don't use it again, we don't use it. So there's not a loss here,
So
unless we move on Wi-Fi.
Councilwoman Carr is opposed. Is anybody else opposed?
Is anybody else? Okay, so that's consensus. All right.
We are gonna get with Xfinity, right?
We'll get with all of them, I'm sure, and
No,
procedurally, we'll figure
we've
that out.
got most of the
Yeah.
lines around. That's the one you want.
Well, I would suggest you not name one entity.
One entity.
Yes.
Something that would.
We'll get with providers and figure out the best way forward. Maybe Chris can do it through the IT committee or whatever, but we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay, we have
We'll
direction.
figure it out. We can figure it out.
Great, thank you. All right.
We have so much less money than we had last year, though. And Lisa, while your wonderful presentation, you're a little bit too optimistic. I guess I just see that we also need to think about the downside of what can happen if the money is slowly released and we don't have it, if we don't address really key issues with stormwater, DRGR, infrastructure. It's just, we need to focus. I mean, I kept my pages, I returned the binder and all of my things from last year. But when I looked at how much more money we had last year than we have this year, it is incredible. We are like down, negative, up. You disagree?
We had a storm, first of all.
Yes, which brings me to, I think we should bring our millage back to what it was.
So you want to raise taxes because you feel in a worse position? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we should go back to.
So yes, so you want to raise
yes.
taxes?
Well.
Yes, okay, so
yes.
you want to raise taxes?
Because the
Okay.
minor.
Is there anybody else? Does anybody else feel like raising taxes?
Minuscule change.
So I don't think there's a consensus to raise taxes. Bring it back as a green sheet.
Okay.
you have-
all right.
Bring it back as a green sheet.
The two of you going at it. I'm not raising taxes, I'm not borrowing money, I'm gonna go with what we can get away with.
We're gonna have to borrow money.
We don't have to borrow money.
If the money doesn't come through from DC in times.
If,
Are we getting off track here?
yeah, we're getting way off track. What do we gotta do here? Come on, manager.
At this meeting,
Assistant manager, somebody straighten up this group.
Mr. Mayor, at this meeting, really what you're trying to do is you're putting the list of things you'd like to add. You can add something that's more nebulous, like I'd like to reserve more money and for future emergencies. And when we get to the next budget meeting, and Lisa can show you how that balances out, because you do have a legal obligation to be able to pay for what's in your budget. That's when you might have a conversation of whether or not the millage is going to be adequate, and hopefully by that time we'll hit more and more information from the property appraiser. Right now, there is a question mark about how much money is going to come in. You can't answer this question. Lisa can't answer this at this point, but you can put on your list the wish list of things you'd like to see in the coming budget. And if at the end of the budget cycle, the process comes out that we're going to be definitely going to receive a shortfall, and the consensus of the commission is not to raise the millage rate or to pay through other mechanisms, then you would start to unwind some of those things from the list. So at this point, I think right now we've had a couple of items added on to the list. I think that's the point we want to get to the conclusion of.
Well, I'd like
one
to
new
add
item.
in parking downtown.
Matt, it's got the table.
If I may, the parking it exists as a line item in our budget for a study from previous year's budget. But to dovetail on what Derek's talking about, it's really about balance and timing, balancing of funding and timing. And so we presented the budget. We've talked about the increases to the operational budget. We're talking about the capital improvement budget. There have been discussions about timing. You've asked to advance timing. It's about the money that you bring in and the timing that you distribute it out. And so we can do what Derek said, but it is all a balancing act. And what happens is if you can't balance what you have, you move timing or you delete projects.
Deal.
All right?
let me add one comment, you know, that,
Yes,
uh,
yes, Chris.
you know, while I appreciate Laura's concern, uh, we also know that we are going to get some portion of the money being raised by HUD and Lee County in terms of other grants. So what's in those requests that we've made are some CIP projects. So, you know, we're gonna get some help from out of the HUD money and the other grants that the Resiliency Task Force is pursuing. So there's some offsets to the concern that Laura's presented.
Okay, where do we go from here? We get near the end of this?
If there's no more,
Yeah, I had one, which was on the library, capital improvements. Do we have enough money in there considering the fact, I mean, I know I've been talking to staff for months. If we're now have a consensus that we want to approach this as being future home for Lee County Sheriff's Office and code enforcement, I'm sorry, what do we call code enforcement now? Neighborhood services. I want to be politically correct. But is that enough money if we're going to try and get that jump-started?
So I think to start the process, because we're gonna be looking, very similar to how we did the ball fields, it was such a larger project. We've got some engineered, some architecture design that has to be done. I'm sure there'll be consultants on both sides. So I think we're adequate now, and then as we it's going to take that amount of time until the next budget cycle to continue for any additional funds that we need at that point.
So we've got enough to do
We
that
have to
now.
get approval from the sheriff's department.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
Absolutely.
and there would have to
Get
be
them on deck.
That's what
there
we
would be future votes on this as well, as there would need to be an interlocal agreement with the sheriff's office on usage and ongoing process, so.
We were planning to spend some money on safety or into,
Correct. In the interim, because you do have neighborhood services located in there, there's some life safety issues and ADA
life
issues
safety issues.
that we would start to address immediately.
So right now, is it usable?
It's functioning there, but there's some additional items that we need to address.
But it is functional.
As of right now, it's functional, yes.
And who's in their code?
Neighborhood services, yes.
Okay, well, it's at least being used, so it's not deteriorating. Okay, anything else? We call it a day?
All right, unless there's anything specific you would like us to address on the CIP, any of those items you want more information on. Also, we're all available. If there's anything specific you'd like an individual meeting or further follow-up on, we can do that. Again, as Lisa presented, I was watching on the way. We're gonna continue to have a budget update at every council meeting. So if there's a need for a vote or further direction, or an item comes up along the way, that can absolutely be added in the process.
Okay, is there any public here? I don't see any public, we're all staff.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question of our city manager? Is there anything you'd care to share with us about events in the county this morning?
Like Bobby.
Just wondering if you could,
I had the ability to attend a ceremony this morning in downtown Fort Myers. It was very well attended, and there was many mention of life safety awards and promotions, and additionally recognition of folks who received milestones in their career.
Alrighty. Anything else?
Yeah, actually, we just got this delivered from the Congressional Office of Byron Donalds, and I wanted to present this to you. Corporal Bobby Hunter, I'm writing to extend my warmest gratitude for being part of Lee County Sheriff Office for 25 years. Your dedication, hard work, and perseverance have paid off. This milestone is a testament to your talents and abilities, and it's well-deserved. You've shown exceptional determination and commitment throughout your journey as corporal, and I want to commemorate you for all your hard work. Your success serves as an inspiration to others, reminding us all that with passion to serve others in a relentless pursuit of excellence, we can overcome any challenge and achieve our goals in Southwest Florida. Your unwavering commitment have transformed countless aspects of our community. I want to express my appreciation and encourage you to continue giving back to our community by coordinating food drives and other philanthropic events that you are passionate about. Congratulations, Corporal Hunter, on this major achievement. You are genuinely the heart and soul of Bonita Springs Community Policing Unit. And that quote came from Jeff Detkus. We reached out to Jeff Detkus, and he said, Corporal Bobby Hunter is the heart and soul of Bonita Springs Police Unit. So we included that in the letter. The congressman signed it this morning. So we're sorry we didn't make it, but we were hopefully you will deliver this to him. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. We're adjourned. We're out of here. Thank you.